What's up, beautiful people, and welcome back to the channel. You know the man, Coach Mike James. You know the brand, PNZ Life Coaching, and we're back. We're back. That's right, we're back. But stop what you're doing right now. Hey, you, stop it. What you're doing right now. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Subscribe. I'm going to be dropping information in the description. I was about to say bio, in the description about our guest today. And just a lot of different things. So if you haven't already, you've seen me before, what are you waiting on? Subscribe. I'll give you time. All right, time's up. Thank you in advance. And I'm excited. I say this often, and y'all hear me say it often, that it's awesome to do interviews and to do shows and everything with people that maybe was a reference, or somebody told you about it, or somebody gave you someone's information. But when you know someone from a connection, I love it. So yet again, I have another one of my CONVOZ fam on here, and I'm excited because I think his story is amazing and can inspire many. So without further ado, bro, I want you to take a moment and just introduce yourself, tell everybody your name and any background information before we jump into this impactful conversation.
Yeah, so I'm Alec Lembecker. I go by the Heart Surgery King on CONVOZ, as Coach Mike mentioned. That's how we met. We're both in the network About Nothing, the best network in the world. And basically, I'm just a lost soul trying to find my way, you know. But
hey, I like it.
I've had a lot of fights that I've had to go through early on in life with my congenital heart defect, which is why I call myself the Heart Surgery King. When you have every surgery that you could possibly have and still standing here, I think you could claim the throne, right? So.
Yeah. Indeed. You know, I think the first time I came across your profile right on CONVOZ, I was like, Heart Surgery King. And I was like,
back then it was
so Alec, I was like,
it was probably still HSK with the date of my transplant back then, actually.
Yeah. So I think maybe the first time I saw you change the Heart Surgery King, I was like, is he a heart surgeon? Because we hadn't interacted at the time for real. And so I was like, is he a heart surgeon? Is he a doctor? What is this about? And when I found out, I was like, okay, got it. Yeah, that's dope. So we'll definitely get more into that. Alec, man, I appreciate you for doing this, man, because we've been talking about it for a while. So glad we're able to finally do it. So you went into it a little bit. You talked about early on, had so many fights and different things like that. So I always like to start impactful conversations like that, because the impact, I think, it's really felt when you go back. So for a moment, just take a moment to tell the viewers kind of about your background and your early life and upbringing.
Yeah, so I was born January 8th, 1992. Should have been a great day for my parents. Unfortunately, just a few hours after I was born, I stopped breathing. They rushed me from the hospital I was born at to the Children's Hospital in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was at the Children's Hospital there. They did some testing, figured out why. Well, after they got me back to breathing, of course. But
right.
They did some testing, and they found out that I had a congenital heart defect called hypoplastic left heart syndrome. So, despite having it for so long, I still have no idea how to describe, like, the medical way of describing it. But essentially, the blood was unable to flow from the left side to the right side of the heart due to the heart not being fully developed properly. So due to that, they had to do 3 different reconstructive surgeries so that the blood could flow properly through my entire body. But to do this, they also have to bypass the heart. So my oxygen levels were never very good. Like, that was one thing where it's like, all right, it keeps you alive, but like, you are not thriving necessarily by any means, you know, like. So I had the first surgery at a week old, and that one I took quite a while to recover from. I think it was about 3 months, if I remember correctly. I researched all this stuff while I was writing my book, which I'm sure we'll touch more on later. But then I also forgot all of it because I'm like, I don't need to sit here and relive this trauma too much.
Right.
So I had the second one at 5 months old, and I know I did not actually have much trouble with that surgery in recovery. The most difficult one, though, I had at 5 years old, and I was in the hospital for, I think it was 4 months, 3 to 4 months, somewhere between there. After that one, which I was in and out of a drug-induced coma for 6 weeks as well. So that was, another struggle that I had within that recovery alone. And then just after that, I was stable, at least by the standards of somebody with my heart defect. And so I was able to, kind of live a relatively normal childhood, at least like the most normal I could. I was still very limited, and especially with physical activity, I could never keep up with the other kids. I was always my growth got stunted very much. So I was always short. I think after about third grade, I stopped growing, and everybody else started growing. And I'm like,
yeah,
all right, cool. And then so I always got picked on for being shorter and like the little kid, But I always tried to find ways I could just to like find my own little niche. It was tough though, because I love sports. Of course, I had to go and torture myself by loving something I couldn't actually partake in, anything like that. But yeah, it was a tough little road for a while there. I mean, I think anytime you try to find yourself, especially growing up as a kid and a teenager, it is. But I felt like there was always some extra, leaps that I had to go through, kind of. Just navigating different, kind of just different things that I wasn't able to do that the other kids could. I can't go to the party because I can't drink, smoke, any of that. Stuff like when I was older. But then even in class, okay, I can't run the mile. I'm gonna have to walk the mile, and I'll be the last person to finish. So, just stuff like that, really, that kind of had to keep navigating. And at home, even there were a lot of struggles. It's never been studied, but there has been some kind of anger issues post Fontan, which is the third surgery, with a lot of patients who have had that, and they have never done concrete studies to see if there's a connection, but all the doctors I've talked to about it have been like, yeah, there's definitely a connection. We just don't know what it is. So at home, stuff got difficult too, So I grew up in a single parent home. It was just me, my mom, and my sister. And I definitely didn't make things easier by any means, unfortunately, but we made it work. My mom always went out of her way to make sure we got to, live the best life we could, because for so long there, we didn't think that there was going to be much living to do.
Yeah.
So that was kind of our big thing growing up, is single family home. We didn't have tons of luxuries, but some of that was because my mom would put money away so we could go out on trips constantly. We'd drive to Florida all the time because that was one of our go-to spots growing up. That was kind of my second home for a while. That's why, I'm a Marlins fan, unfortunately. Baseball starting today. And then I got the Gators as well. That's one of my teams.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, they own Ohio State.
Right.
I know.
Unfortunately for you that you are a Gators fan. I mean,
when's the last time you guys beat
I guess,
the Gators, huh?
I guess one of the only bragging rights that y'all can have is that y'all beat Ohio State in multiple sports for a few years straight, but hadn't did anything since. But that's another another conversation that may not be so impactful. It'll be Alec and Mike arguing again.
Much more bitter conversations right there.
Right. Man, Alec, you said something though, and like you mentioned, talking about the book. I'll tell you too. So you remember I was telling you we had a conversation. You text me last week, and you was like, "Where are you?" So I'm actually midway, and this is horrible. I should be done by now because it's. I think I was telling you it's
bad.
intriguing.
Nobody's reading it.
It's intriguing the way you wrote it, right? And so I thought I was further along because the first thing I did was listen to the whole playlist. And so I was like, oh, okay, I got it. And we'll talk about that to not spoil that. But so the chapter 4, of course, is Hobson. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. So in reading that, even in those first 3 chapters, it was nostalgic for me because my major in college was exercise science or fitness leadership. So a
Mm.
lot of the stuff I understood a lot more than the average reader would. And just hearing you say that, and even the surgeries and all of this, and it was like, okay, it took me back to like trying to keep up in anatomy and physiology. So you mentioned some of them already, like the troubles that you had even in school and things, but also the trips and your mom trying to make it as normal as possible. So that next question, what were some of the other impactful moments for you growing up that you can remember, that you, even looking back now, you think about and it's like, okay, that was impactful, whether it be good or bad, that you still, it just sticks out to you today?
Yeah, so some of them seem kind of petty. One of them would be for me, though, my freshman year. I want to say it was maybe 2-3 weeks into the year. I finally built up the courage to talk to my government and citizen teacher, who was actually our head football coach. And after talking to him, I was like the last class of the day, so I got to stay after school and talk to him real quickly. And I ended up becoming an equipment manager for our high school football team, which, being unable to play, but football was always my number one growing up. As everybody who knows me now knows, like, basketball is my number one now. But when I was a kid, man, like, I grew up watching the Vikings all the time, sadly. Thanks to Robert Smith for visiting me in the hospital when I was 5 years old and got me into the Vikings. I was a big Gopher football fan as well back in the day, Gators football with Tebow and stuff. So then in high school, I wanted to play, but I couldn't. I wanted to partake in some method, and luckily I got to become an equipment manager. And that's something I'm just like a crazy, absolute 4 years magical ride. My freshman year, we went to the state semifinals. It was the first state tournament appearance since 1981. So, like, that was huge. We got to play at the Metrodome, which, growing up going to games there, that was huge for me. Like, the kid in me was still just absolutely lit about that. But we also went in 2008, which would have been my junior year as well. We went to the state semis as well. And that year actually was crazy because we only lost one game all year. But that, I think, was a very impactful moment because I also ended up getting a scholarship in college to be an equipment manager. So without that, that conversation back then with my high school coach, I wouldn't have gotten that scholarship to NDSU, which that was a crazy year too, because I ended up being on the team technically that made the first playoff appearance in North Dakota State Division I history. So yeah, that was pretty fun too. So that would be one of them for sure. On a less positive note, though, I think Memorial Weekend before my 8th grade year, I think. So that would have been 2006, I believe. No, 2005. It would have been 2005. My dad was in and out a lot, as he chose or decided. We would go to his house occasionally on weekends, though, throughout most of my elementary and middle school days. We went over, not Memorial Weekend, it was Labor Day weekend. The one that in the fall, I always get those two mixed up. Like, I just remember they used to bookend school. They would bookend school.
Exactly.
The one right before school started, which I believe was Labor Day weekend, we
Labor
went
Day,
to the river, and it was just a horrible time. Things went completely haywire with him, my sister, and I. And that was the last time I actually saw him or spoke to him for 5 years after that. So that was kind of, I think, the big moment for me where I realized, oh yeah, this is not a person, even though we are blood related, that should be in my life, So that was kind of the moment where I'm like, all right, yeah, I spent so much time wanting to be, the kid that my dad wanted. I wanted to be the son that he wanted to have around and be the perfect little kid, but then I realized, I'm like, oh yeah, this is an expectation you can't live up to because it's not realistic. And that it shouldn't matter anyways, whether I was, the perfect son or whatever anyways. So that weekend, I think, was impactful for me because that was the weekend I'm like, all right, this is the end of the road here, kind of, with pushing this relationship or whatever.
Yeah, man, you know what? That's even in those two things, right? And like you said, total opposites. One good,
Yes.
making that initial conversation, impactful conversation with your teacher, your coach that winded up
Yeah.
leading just a conversation freshman year in high school, leading you to a
Mhm.
scholarship, at least in the I guess the vicinity of the very thing that really meant a lot to you, football and sports, right?
Yes.
Um, and so for that one, it's just I hear even in that, especially for young people, because I've mentioned this a lot on combos in different places, but I have a passion for the youth. So I'm a youth coach as well, and a lot of my speaking engagements are with youth sports teams and everything. And so for the youth and people that will watch this, and even parents, is just that idea to encourage the young people to, no matter what you've been through, like your background, you could have easily said, "Oh man, what's the point of me talking to him? It's not going to happen," and this and
Mhm.
that. But you still went forward to speak on something that where you were passionate about already. So, like, no matter what your situation is or your past experiences, go for that thing that you love. And then on the flip side of that, right, that that Labor Day weekend, right, and that week going horrible, as much as it hurts sometimes, the best
Mhm.
thing that we can do is set those boundaries, even when it's people close to us. Because, like you said, it was at that point where I realized, okay, even though we're blood related, this is someone that I don't want in my life. And a lot of people will continue a lot of suffering and different things. Of course, it's me, inputting the life coach drop in there,
Yeah.
but a lot of people go through a lot of different things and a lot of suffering and pain because they don't have that, courage to set those boundaries for themselves in
Mhm.
terms of who has access to you. Because I look at it like this, like, man, it's a privilege for someone to have access to you, especially, and I'm saying you, especially someone with what you've been through that's still here. You talk about that even in the book and talking about, hey, man, from that first surgery, you didn't know. You kind of explain that too in the book, like your mom thinking every day was like, we got to make the most. This might be the last one. So what are we gonna do? So
Yep.
kind of
Exactly.
one upping each day. So that's huge,
Yeah.
man. In those. So Alec, fast forward now, just
Mhm.
thinking in your adult life, what is your idea? And don't tell me anything about like Minnesota basketball. I mean, I don't care. I don't.
You
I
don't
don't
want to
want to
hear
hear about
any of my
or
Tyus Jones
or
stories?
or Minnesota football. Minnesota football, Big Ten. As two Big Ten fans,
Mhm.
no, but seriously, what is your idea of impact today as an adult? What does impact mean for you?
Yeah. So for me, I feel like it's inspiration. Like, given my history, my story, how I got to this point, that's kind of what it was funny because I never connected with the congenital heart defect community when I had the defect. I had the transplant, in 2019. And it was after that where I started to connect with the people from the congenital heart defect community. I guess I should have probably connected sooner as well, though, just because I was one of the older patients out there with my defect. Not long before I had passed, before I was born, they would just let you pass. They'd be like, "All right, well, go home, enjoy these few days," and
Yeah.
that's that. So, being one of the older patients, I should have probably done that more. And I guess now that I have my transplant and kind of a complete story in a way, I've been trying to do that. Just inspiration is my big hope for impact, at least, with the book, joining a few different communities online where I can tell my story as well, just and give advice to any patients that are on there, still dealing with the stuff that I dealt with, whether it was, kind of this trauma from the surgeries themselves, the physical scars, the mental scars of all that stuff, or the social outcasting that a lot of in congenital heart defect patients do have to deal with, So I think that's my big thing for impact now is just kind of continuing to inspire and give hope, which I guess I was doing that all along, but now I'm putting more of a concentrated effort into doing that. Even though, like, hey, look, I got my own brand, I can sell my own merch. Like, we're in an age now where even with the congenital heart defect and stuff, you can find ways to make a living to tell your
Mm-hmm.
story that weren't possible back in 1998, 97, when I had those initial surgeries back then and stuff. So I think that's a big thing too, is just kind of pointing people in a direction like, hey, look, we've got this, we've got this platform now. We can use these different platforms to tell our stories to kind of get the word out there and the information out there as well.
Yeah, you said that like something you said, it just like, wow, that's huge. I was just sitting here thinking, like, can you imagine, you trying to get HSK apparel, or me trying to get my coaching apparel out there in the AOL dial-up days? Like,
right.
Like, what? How did it even happen?
Like, it takes longer to make the order than the shipping itself does, just because the dial-up.
Man, yeah. So it's interesting that you brought that up. I was
social
like,
media
man,
back
yeah,
then too didn't exist. I mean, there was
yeah,
no social
social
media.
Yeah,
So
I
you wouldn't be able
remember
to get
that.
the word out there.
Yeah, that news, I forgot what it was. I don't know if it was Good Morning America or Today or something, but when they were discussing, it was in the 90s, discussing the internet, and they were saying like, it's the email or the thing, and it was, they, all this is foreign, and now it's just commonplace. So when Gen Z or Gen A hear us talk about this, like, wait, it wasn't always here. No,
yeah,
not at all. So I don't know.
And it was pretty bad when it first got here as well. It's not like the internet was good for quite a while there,
Yeah, you listen, you either get the internet or everything else you need in your house.
Yep.
The internet, it's all your
unplug
power,
the phone,
your telephone, everything's going to just you connecting, right? It's just you connecting with the World Wide Web, which really even wasn't even worldwide at the time. It was like, you'd be lucky if you could send something to your classmate. So when you talked about it, and I didn't realize the order of my questions with the impactful conversations, I didn't realize that the order was done right until I've done more conversations. And I always hear kind of a lead in or alley-oop to this question from the last one, which is, what is impact for you as an adult? And typically this next one, it comes up in there. You mentioned like getting involved with different communities, right? And being able to inspire and share your story. And so when you think about that, that's that next question. What does community mean to you as an adult?
Yeah. I think it's just connections, really. I mean, that's very basic, a very simple definition of it. But I mean, look at CONVOZ. That's a community. We the Network About Nothing. We always say we're a community, we're a family. And I think that's the big thing for community, is just having people around you that you want around you, that can help you, that you can help as well when needed. Just making connections in any way, shape, or form is community. And like I said before in the previous question, this applies to this as well. It's easier to do that now than it ever has been, because we've got so many different methods from, virtually, especially, just to connect with people all over the world. So I think anybody can really be a part of an individual's community. Like I have blood relatives that are not a part of my community, but I have people I've just met months ago that are a part of my community, my family, whatever you want to define them as. And I think that's what it is just a group of people working together to achieve common goals, whether it's success, money, whatever, just making each other grateful to be alive, be around each other, whatever.
Yeah. And as you said too, inspired, like whether it's us, cutting up and having a good time on CONVOZ, but it's always something as crazy as the show about nothing can be. There's always something in there that's just a gem somewhere deep in that space.
It's usually
and time.
Me. I'm usually the gem, by the way, everybody.
I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna have to edit that clip out and just send it to everybody. Say, hey y'all, agree or disagree. Send it out as a poll. Agree or disagree.
We already know how that poll's gonna end.
Right. So Alec, you already answered this one too, but just if you wanted to expound on it, one of the things we talked about is that with impact is inspiring, right? So what else is there, if anything else, that you're doing now that you're having an impact?
Yeah, so with my HSK Productions, my brand, I actually do highlight videos for athletes, mostly local born ones, born in Minneapolis, Minnesota area. And, but a lot of them playing overseas right now. I've got athletes who are in Israel right now, Sweden, France, all over in Europe. And these guys play year by year contracts. So every year they come to me, they need a video to give out to scouts to help, get a new contract each year and hopefully elevate each year as well into a better league, into a better country, more money. So I'd like to believe my videos help, at least in that aspect, to make a little impact on their careers. Like I said, with my book, inspiration as well. I am hoping eventually that I'll be making films as well. That would be another thing that I would love to do, just to help kind of inspire and make an impact in that way. Tell stories that we don't get to see. As we get so many rehashes now of stories that we've seen years ago. Yeah. So I would love to add like new content to the mix in that aspect. And that would be, I would imagine, impactful in some way, whether it's on a personal level of just, hey, look, I'm doing what I want to, or if it's on a bigger level of people going and seeing films and being like, yep, that I relate to that. I can learn from that. So that's my ultimate goal, but right now it's just highlight videos mostly.
Yeah,
that's one thing though. But other than that, yeah, I'm hoping to do more public appearances and more public speaking coming up once I'm fully safe from COVID and everything. Cause that was actually something they pushed onto me right after transplant. They're like, oh, we would love to have people like you come and talk about how much, it means to do organ donation, to do this and that. And it was something I was like, yeah, I'm down to do it once I'm ready. But, I've not had a chance yet. I had a 6-month recovery from transplant. And then I got the post-transplant lymphoma, PTLD. And then from there, we went right into a pandemic, and being high risk during that, it was tough. So that's been the tough part, is actually making an impact. I feel like I haven't done enough, even though it'll be 3 years in June. But that's one thing I'm also looking forward to more as we get further and further out from this pandemic, and people like myself who are high risk are going to be more and more safe to go out and be able to do stuff like that, public speaking, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Listen, so you mentioned it, man, but for a moment, born with a broken heart.
Yes.
I mean, well, first of all, I think when you shared the cover, either on IG or CONVOZ, I was like, I get it, because I'm intrigued. So yes. I want you to take a moment and just talk about, like, what was your process or thought process to write the book, and then the idea of, which is so unique to me. Now, it's been done, of course. I just haven't, besides maybe kids' books, had a book of this magnitude to have a playlist with it that takes you on this journey of where you were in that point. So talk to me for a moment and the audience about how you came up with the book and that process of putting a playlist to it.
Yeah. So the book thing, the idea behind the book, or writing a book eventually, kind of started when I was on the transplant list. It was something I tossed around with mostly myself, actually, but also with my mom and a couple other family members. But it was something I wasn't super serious about. I'm like, well, let's just see how let's make sure I get this transplant and survive the transplant, which, I mean, the rate of surviving that was much higher than it was my previous surgeries. But I think that's kind of what scared me a little bit. It was like, oh, the odds are in my favor for once. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of when it started, but it was just more, oh, I might do this someday, or I should do this someday kind of thing, When I was in the hospital, still in the ICU recovering even, there was a few different nurses, and they're like, yeah, you need to write a book, your story. Yeah, you should definitely do that. And I figured it was just nurses being nurses. They're always trying to cheer you up because you're stuck in the hospital, which actually I was probably the happiest I've ever been in the hospital was when I was recovering from my transplant. And I was like, yeah, well, one day, like it was something I was getting more serious about, but I still was thinking like, that's not anything I'm going to put in like the front of my list of things I want to get accomplished. Then the pandemic hit. And
Yeah.
when the pandemic hit, I had to do a lot of sitting around. You know, I couldn't go to work. I couldn't really leave the house at all, actually, outside of going to my appointments at the Mayo Clinic, just because it's like, all right, I'm like more high risk than everybody else, you know, with my weakened immune system due to the medications to prevent rejection. So I was sitting around. I'm like, all right, I got to do something productive though. Like, and I'm like, all right, well, I did say I was going to write a book. I guess I could start it now. And the thing about me is like, I've always enjoyed writing. It's funny because people tell me I'm a decent speaker and I'm like, I'm okay, but I always feel way more comfortable when I have pen to pad, or in this case was type, you know, because it was you know, typed up online. The whole book was, and edited. And so I just started one day, just was like, all right, it's raining out. I can't go out, shoot hoops. I can't do anything. I'm gonna just start writing it. And I started writing and I kept going and going and going. And I think it took me like 2 or 3 months to have the first draft done. And that was actually almost 400 pages. It was like a Harry Potter book of my life, essentially. So that was that needed to be cut down quite a bit. I remember sending that to some of my beta readers, my initial beta readers, and I'm like, it's good, but it's too long. I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, it was way too detailed. I mean, I went into everything from like every game that I was an equipment manager to like all the stuff that's in the book now, and all sorts of different random stuff that just didn't make the final cut. And as I got closer and closer to finishing the book, I started doing research. I'm like, all right, I could get a publisher. And I had a lot of people in my ear being like, yeah, this is good. This could be published. People want a story like this. But my fear was that if a publisher took it, it's out of my hands then. They can do whatever they want to that. They can change the title. They could take out the playlist, which was something that I really wanted to keep in there. And it's mostly just because music is one of the things that, like, I mean, it's funny because I want to like, oh yeah, I want to do film and television. Music's my first love though. Well, maybe not my first, sports might be, but music was definitely like my big love. As I got older, it got me through so much stuff, like different, just every variety of music I could from in high school. It got me through all the social stuff that I had to deal with, you know, surgeries and stuff as I got older, as my health deteriorated post college and everything. There was always, like, anybody who knows me knows I got headphones in my ears at all time. Like, so that was kind of the big thing, was I wanted to pay respects to an art form that I thought had kind of helped me get through everything. And I was just, you know, one day listening to all these different songs. I'm like, all right, like, you know, these are relatable songs. I think I could work these in. And sure enough, a little bit of tweaking. I had a huge list of songs initially, and I kind of just trimmed it down each chapter. I'm like, all right, that song not as good as this one for this chapter. Kind of just trimmed it down as I kept going too. After I think I did that initially while the beta readers had my book. So I gave them a few months, and that's when I started doing the chapters more, focused in on the titles of that, because I had some free time to really, you know, just focus on something other than the writing itself and the editing. So when I finally decided I wanted to self-publish, I finally finalized the playlist and started getting everything ready, formatting, the final edits and everything, so I could self-publish it on the anniversary of my transplant, actually. So June 14th was the release date in 2021, which was 2 years after my transplant. And the playlist kind of just was my thing, like, kind of, like I said, pay some respects to an art form and some of the artists who I felt whose music had really helped me through those tough times that people will read about in the books. Like, some of those songs in the playlist with the line, which, like, the chapter they line up to, that was a song it was in constant rotation during whatever time, you know. Not all of them. There's some which I discovered afterwards, you know, and I'm like, oh, that would have fit really well back in this era. I wish I had this song back then. So some of them I just kind of lined up based off of when I was really into the song. Some of them it was more like, okay, that would have been a great song to have back at this time. And some I just kind of chose, like, based off either the title or the content, or in some cases even both, and how they lined up with the chapter's content as well. So I ended up actually ordering a bunch of hardcover copies. There's only 40 of them. As everybody knows, the book is only available in paperback. Right now, at least, I'm working on a couple other formats. I know. Well, and there's an ebook available for anybody who wants that. But I did order 40 hardcover copies with a separate, instead of the red, it's the blue. It's blue, which is the other color for the congenital heart defect ribbon. So red and blue is what the congenital heart defect ribbon is. And I actually sent out some to the artists who have songs featured in the book even. So Atmosphere, which is a rap duo from Minneapolis area who I'm really into. I got a hold of their MC Slug, who's one of the more well-known underground artists. He reached out back to me, and like I sent him a copy. Recognize, who is with Strange Music, which is owned by Tech Nine. He reached out, or I reached out to him, and he got back to me as well. So I got a hold of only 4 of the artists, but I still have the books. So I'm like, all right, one day I'm going to be big time enough to just be in the same room as these people. I'll give them the book then. So that's kind of my thought process. I'm like, whichever ones I wasn't able to reach out to then, I'll get it to them eventually. I'm pretty confident in that.
I love that. Man, that's so awesome. So, Alec, this is a question that I thought about even as you were talking about that. So when somebody gets your book, because you explaining how you wrote and you kept writing and writing. Most people, when they write their first book, man, it's really small. It's really small.
Yes.
It's really quick. And even with your book, it's so much depth to it and how and honestly, I would just say, as a reader, I can tell when someone loves to write because it's different. The delivery is different, and it's different how it kind of grabs you into the story. So on the other hand, some people in there, it's like, okay, this is like maybe a term paper or just, the goal of let me get my first book done. But with this, the way you wrote it, I mean, I can tell that you love to write. And so when someone orders your book and they get it, whether it's digital copy or the book in their hand, tangible, because I like the tangible book. I like to flip the page.
I'm the same way. I'm like,
so for someone who gets this, right, what is that thing that you want someone to take away from after they finish your book? When they get to that last page there, what is that thing that you want someone to take away from reading your book?
Yeah, so 2 things actually I can think of. One, damn, I'm amazing. Me, not the reader, me.
Right, Alec.
Yes. But no, just as we've kind of discussed before, inspiration. I feel like it's a story where there's so many times in this book where I could have easily just been like, all right, I'm good, done. I'm just going to go sit in my room for the rest of whatever short amount of life may or may not be left. But I always tried to push to fit in, to do this. I was always trying to get myself to a point where, like, if it's just weird because I built expectations for myself. And I even have a chapter in the later portion of the book where I'm like, the odds were always stacked against me, yet I always seemed to dream big. Like I couldn't help myself. It was almost like this has to be worth it sort of thing. So I think that's kind of the thing too, is the book is almost a story of just not giving up. Like, I mean, as I talk about in the book too, I didn't get my transplant until I was 27. I had been begging for one from ages 5 to 15. I would pester my doctors and they'd be like, no, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. And like, I gave up on actually getting a transplant, and then I still got one years later. Like, so I guess that's the ultimate kind of story there, is like anything is possible, and just don't give up. As long as you don't give up, anything you can think of will be possible to you.
Man, that's awesome. Look, man, I can't wait till you get on your speaking tour. I just want to be in the room, even a fly on the wall, just to see the inspiration.
You
right?
want to be my coach?
Physically.
You want to just coach me through?
Well, listen, you know what I'm most excited about? I want to be a fly on the wall, Alec, for the first time you curse someone out.
Oh, yeah. You
would.
For
the first time you're like in your speech and you just all of a sudden curse someone out, or
somebody's gonna ask
some kid that's like, and I'm just
snap on them. Yes.
But man, I'm excited. I'm excited always for the journey, and Really, man, this is what Impactful Conversations is all about. Like,
Mm.
even we've been connected all this time, but just learning a lot of stuff. And whether it's Black Business Boom and Impactful Conversations, it's all the behind the scenes stuff that people don't know about, or they don't know the depth of what it takes to get to this point, or even your story. And so now I'm hoping from this interview, not that my word means a lot outside of my own mind, but the stamp of approval and just telling people to get the book. I mean, like, honestly, get the book, because you'll get an opportunity to know Alec just as I do. And I think it's even more details, because it's, they always say if it's a book and a movie, the book is always better because it's so much more detail to it, right?
Yeah.
So get the book. So Alec, I have two more questions for you. The first one is, so what's next for Heart Surgery King? What's next
Yeah.
for you? What's on the horizon?
Oh boy, I've been bragging about this a lot lately, so I know already, but film school. I will be starting film school in October at InFocus, which is in Vancouver. So I am actually going for VFX compositing right now. So that is a 5-month online program, which will be kind of nice. I can still stay close to home, lower my cost of living, keep my cost of living lower while I wrap this all up. And by this time next year, I actually should be in the industry by that point even. So my goal is to have that program completed, kind of use that to help me finally get stabilized. Because like I've kind of mentioned, it's since transplant, it's been one thing after another, and I'm still just at the home I grew up in. So it's like finally getting out there, getting stabilized, getting on my own feet at last will be kind of the big thing from that. And then after that, I'm hoping to go back to film school and eventually take the film production program, which is a year-long in-person program. And that's where I would learn everything from directing, writing, which we already know I'm pretty good at, and all that, like every little aspect of the filmmaking process itself.
Yeah.
And eventually HSK Productions hopefully will be a movie and television studio, not just a little highlight video haven for as it is right now. So that's what's next for me, film school, and probably a little bit more film school after that even. But just getting on my feet and getting established is going to be my big thing first.
Man, that's awesome. And I'm just throwing that into your speaking whenever that happens, those opportunities, man, because I know it's so many people that, just want to hear that story and need to hear that story. And especially, like you said, the community, right? Anyone who had any heart defect or just medical period. There was one point, man, where you were explaining how, and it took me back when you said, man, like in the hospital doing my recovery was probably one of the happiest times of my life. And when you said that, I was like, wow, because when I had my motorcycle accident back in 2017 and, multiple surgeries, multiple blood transfusions, all this stuff, like people still don't know the half of how tough that was. And I can remember the nurses and everybody would know when I'm coming out of a surgery, they was like, okay, here comes Mike. Cause I was either singing or joking or laughing. Now, of course, the medicines they pump in you, but it was like people were expecting to come around the corner in my room as my legs propped up, if things are broken, whole left side messed up, people were expecting to come around the corner and see me like, oh. But I mean, I was entertaining people as they came. I had former clients when I was back then, I was still personal training. I had clients bring me joke books because, I'm the master of dad jokes. So
you steal them off Instagram. Everybody, he steals them off Instagram. I've seen the account.
No. I steal them from everywhere.
And then later you'll say the joke, and I'm like, dude, I saw that on Instagram 3 days ago. Like,
I steal them from everywhere, but of course, and everybody won't watch this interview, so I can spoil it. I can spill the beans. And I think my wife actually introduced me to the account, and I was offended because I was like, I should sue them. They're stealing mine.
They're stealing your content. Yes.
But yeah, dad jokes. Of course, dad jokes is one of the Instagram accounts, but there's so many out there, man. Like, just even Google my Joker-dex is really extensive. So I'm proud of that. But Alec, the last question, man, I want you to take a moment and just let everybody know how they can contact you, how they can reach you for your apparel, your book, anything, connect with you on any social media. Just tell people how they connect with you and really see the other side of you that I know, because this was awesome. This was the professional, the speaker, the award-winning author and speaker, but I want them to get all parts of Alec and see.
I don't know if I should introduce that side to everybody else.
Right. But no, just take a moment and tell people how they connect with you and purchase the book or any other information that you want to share.
Yeah, so the book is available at lulu.com. That's lulu.com. My website is heartsurgeryking.com, and there is a direct link to the book on there as well. I also do have a shop where I sell merch. Not only do I have the HSK Productions merch, this month is Donate Life Month, so I did launch a new design just last week. It is the 3 hearts that I use. So I use a blue heart and a red heart to represent the congenital heart defect ribbon, and then a green heart, which is the Donate Life color. So I do those 3 hearts, and then over it is one of the last lines from the book, and it says, "Turning tragedy into triumph, one heartbeat at a time." So I have plastered that onto a bunch of different stuff on the site. So there's, beach towels, t-shirts, sweatshirts. I even put that in kid designs because I know there are a lot of kids who would probably enjoy having a shirt like that when they have a congenital heart defect. The thing about it, though, too, is I feel like that's a shirt that still fits for people who don't have a congenital heart defect. Even you don't need to represent either of the 3 hearts to be able to turn tragedy into triumph, especially one heartbeat at a time. So that is a new thing on heartsurgeryking.com/shop. I am on Instagram at heartsurgeryking, Twitter, HSK Productions, and then on CONVOZ, if anybody else joins and would want to follow me on there for some reason, I am at heartsurgeryking.
For whatever reason.
Well, I don't know why you want to, but sure. At heartsurgeryking minus the I, because they didn't have enough letters for my full name, and they won't give me an I. I'm just like, come on, guys. That's all I wanted.
Give me my I.
Right? So
yeah, that's awesome.
Those are my main social media. I don't really use I don't use TikTok, Facebook, none of that. So.
Okay. Awesome. Well, of course, I'm going to drop that in the description below for everybody. Definitely connect.
I do have a YouTube page, though, actually. So,
okay.
HSK Productions or HSK Sports Productions is where you can find my videos.
So that's like your highlights and your edits.
Yeah, and
okay.
I do have an HSK Productions one, just without the sports, but I have not journeyed outside of the sports realm quite yet. So that is a currently blank page, but if you want to go subscribe in advance, that'd be cool too, I guess. So.
Yeah, awesome. That's good. Of course, I'm going to drop all that in the description, so make sure you connect. And again, people, like, for all the viewers that's watching, whether you are coaches, teachers, nurses, whatever it may be, I think the opportunity is there to be able to give Alec that platform and that space to share his story, because I'm inspired. Even since we've been connected, I've been inspired by your story, more so
even when I was mean to you.
Yeah, more. I didn't care. It was like water off a duck's back, because I'm like, I know who Alec truly is. And then when I started reading the book, I think I text you. I don't know if it was chapter 1 or chapter 2. I was like, oh man, dude, man, your story and your journey, you've done a lot already. And people, get the book, man. It's a lot of, like, early on, I told y'all I'm like halfway in chapter 4, and I was like, I got to get back to it, but get the book, because it's a lot of information that it's like unexpected stuff, right? Like, oh, a surprise here, a surprise there.
Yes.
And as you're going on that journey with you, you really, like I said, someone who enjoys writing and passionate about it, you take people on that journey and you begin to feel part of the story, So I love that. Any last words, anything you want to leave the people with?
Yeah, just know that if you ever do a versus fantasy battle against me, or not a versus fantasy, a merged fantasy battle against me, and you have Michael Jackson, I have Prince, just put Thriller in there. That's all you had to do to beat me.
Listen, I'll never live that down, and that's
No.
Cool, And one of the things too, it was probably more ego. I wanted the bragging rights and I explained this to you and to other people. Like, I wanted the bragging rights that I could beat you without using Thriller. And it was a few people, which people were muted. A few people who said, I wouldn't have put it in there either, but those voices got drowned by the other loud voices. But again, you heard it there, people. If people you are ever in a merc, if you're ever in a merc fantasy battle on CONVOZ and you have Michael Jackson, just always use Thriller. And with that,
it's not even a layup; it's a slam dunk.
It's a dunk. No, it's a 3-pointer, a 2-point shot from right in front of the 3-point line, a layup, an alley-oop, and a dunk all in one.
All at once. A Steph Curry 3-pointer from like 50 feet away as well.
Man, really? Or when he's in the stands, in the stands for warm-up, like he's Alec, man, Heart Surgery King, I appreciate you, man, for taking the time to do this. I'm glad we finally got a chance to do it. Can't wait for people to see this and share it out. Man, it's been great though. Funny story, Mert, we recorded his 50th edition or 50th episode, special edition, because I did so many things with the edit and all that. We recorded his Black Business Booming episode in like beginning of January, and it was just released a few weeks ago. So
I did see that.
Merc was like, man, it's gonna be like Christmas decorations in the background, and people are gonna be like, what? But I told them from the start, because you remember we originally did it on CONVOZ, and I didn't have the recording right and all that stuff, because at that time nobody knew that. Okay, you got to get somebody else to record it. So I was like, look, man, we're gonna make it special. Whenever I get to 50, you're going to be my 50th. So I had to hold it there just in the drafts
waiting
until I get 47, 48, 49. So that was good. But man, I'm excited. We finally got a chance to do it, man. I appreciate you. Everybody, make sure that you connect. There's going to be links in the description so you connect with Alec. Man, I appreciate your time. And as always, people, we'll see y'all next time on another Impactful Conversations. Peace.